Shaun Wade won 4 state championships in high school. Now he wants to win 4 Big Ten championships in college. As Kyle Rowland from the Toledo Blade joins us now. And Kyle, we heard Shaun Wade earlier this week. The focus is on winning a Big Ten championship game. Ohio State, 4th straight year they've gone to Indy in the Big Ten title game. Should this year be any different than the last 3?
I would not think so. A massive favorite, a huge talent advantage over their opponent, Northwestern. Northwestern's been a great story this year, as they were last time they made the Big Ten championship game, but I think it will be very difficult for them to challenge Ohio State. The Buckeye offense just way too high-powered, even for that Northwestern defense. And I think even if Northwestern does hold Ohio State, let's say to 35 points, I mean, I don't see Northwestern's offense getting anywhere near that number. It would take a bunch of special teams plays and turnovers on Ohio State's offense. So I think it's going to be four straight for Ohio State, which would be the first time in Big Ten history that anyone has won 4 straight outright championships.
Ohio State's undefeated. Northwestern has 1 loss. Their lone loss came to Michigan State, a Michigan State team that Ohio State 2 weeks ago had absolutely 0 problems with, despite the fact that they were extremely shorthanded. Is overconfidence the biggest enemy for the Buckeyes this weekend?
I mean, not really, honestly. I mean, I think they can afford to be overconfident, quite frankly. I mean, they're just that good and they're that much better than Northwestern. But I just don't see them being overconfident. That's just not the culture of the Ryan Day coached Buckeyes. They're always pretty focused. Shaun Wade talked about that as well, just saying how, they got something to prove this week. Don't take Northwestern lightly. Ohio State needs to win big. I don't agree with them. I think they just need to win. And if they're undefeated, they're going to be in the playoff. But it's certainly a good message for a leader to be preaching in the locker room before a game.
We'll get to that playoff scenario in just a moment, but first, let's talk a little about the fact that in an alternate reality, Justin Fields would be the quarterback for Northwestern right now.
Yeah, it'd be a heck of an alternate reality too. But it really is true. I mean, he when he was going into his junior season, he went to a camp at Northwestern. He and Pat Fitzgerald developed a bond. The Wildcats were in before pretty much every team in the country and how good Justin Fields was. This is even before he was a starter in high school. But they still kind of saw the picture that was emerging. He considered committing. He didn't. A few months later, he went from like the 331st ranked recruit to the #1 ranked recruit just in one junior season. And then that was the end of Justin Fields possibly going to Northwestern. Actually then committed to another Big Ten school, Penn State, decommitted, ended up at Georgia, and then, as we know, transferred to Ohio State. So Peyton Ramsey has been a nice addition to Northwestern this year, but he is not Justin Fields. So they'd be a totally different team this season if they had to have a quarterback.
Peyton Ramsey, the former Indiana quarterback, graduate transfer to Northwestern, and he has solidified the quarterback position for the Wildcats, but he's more of a game manager because this is a Northwestern offense that wants to control the ball. They did a very good job against Illinois. Granted, it was against Illinois, of running the ball last week. So this is very much a ground and pound type team for Northwestern?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have to be uber aggressive against Ohio State. I mean, they just got to throw, the proverbial kitchen sink at them. Get creative, kind of, out scheme them, I guess, because they can't just, line up and try to win, man on man. That's just not going to happen against Ohio State with the athletes that Northwestern has. It's not to disparage them. It's just there's a big difference between what Ohio State has on their roster and what Northwestern has. So I think it'll be interesting to see how creative they get. They made a change at offensive coordinator after last season, and it's been a positive change for Northwestern. The offense has been a lot better. But they're going to have to score a pretty decent amount of points, I think, to beat Ohio State. So they're going to have to be able to throw the ball. I don't think they can just ground and pound Ohio State and kind of try to ground out a victory.
Now, you believe if Ohio State wins on Saturday, they're in the college football playoff. But I go back to 2 years ago, similar situation where Ohio State, Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game. Ohio State beat Northwestern, but it wasn't necessarily an impressive victory, particularly in the second half. And that cost Ohio State a berth in the college football playoff 2 years ago. But you don't think that's going to be a scenario that's going to play out this week?
No, not at all. I mean, a couple of years ago, Ohio State, number one, they weren't undefeated. Their loss was just a horrible, horrible loss to Purdue. So I think it's different. And just an undefeated Ohio State, I think, is going to get in. I mean, they pass all the eye tests, all those types of deals. Everyone knows how much talent they have on their team and how good they are. I think one of the biggest things is there's just no one out. Like, who would make it over them? I mean, like, I know A&M is there with one loss, but they're just not impressive at all. They got blown out by Alabama. Iowa State has 2 losses. No way. Florida, even if they beat Alabama, I would be just stunned if they could work their way all the way to 4th with 2 losses and having a really bad loss to a team that was a 23-point underdog or whatever LSU was. Cincinnati has 0 respect from the committee, which I disagree with, but that's just the way it is. They're not going to go from 9th to 4th. So I just think more than any other year in the history of the playoff, there's just a huge gap from 4 to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I mean, there's not really anyone there waiting to take that spot from Ohio State.
And we know there's not that big of a difference between being the number 2 ranked team and the number 3 ranked team because 2 plays 3. The way you look at it is Ohio State pretty much locked into playing whoever wins the ACC title game, whether it be a Notre Dame at number 2 or a Clemson at number 3?
Yeah, it would take some really, really weird scenario for them to not play the winner of that game just because they're not going to have Notre Dame and Clemson play a 3rd time. So if you kind of project out and you think Clemson will win, which most people do, it would be a rematch of just an all-time classic last year, and it would match Ohio State up against a Clemson team it has never beaten. The only team Ohio State's ever played at least 4 times and never beaten. It's an amazing stat. And just another quirk to that is they've never beaten South Carolina either. They're 0-2 against the Gamecocks. So 0-6 all time against teams from South Carolina.
And all those games have been in bowl games as well.
Correct. Yeah, that is correct. And the Clemson games have all been pretty historical games. I mean, 2 of them were in the playoff. Last year will always be remembered. One of them was the famous Woody Hayes, Charlie Bauman game. And then the other was the
last game Braxton Miller played at quarterback.
Exactly. So, I mean, there's been a whole lot of things. And then that Braxton Miller Orange Bowl game, I mean, Ohio State completely blew that game, should have won. And then last year, obviously, they had their chances and probably should have won. So I think ever since they got back from Glendale last year, they've been laser focused on number 1, just kind of winning the national title, getting back to the playoff. But I think Clemson's always been in the back of their mind, and they would relish a chance to play Clemson. And who knows where that game will even be at, because there's discussions about the Rose Bowl possibly moving. So we'll find out Sunday.
It'll be very interesting if it is Clemson, because if we talked about that 2013 game, and a lot of the players in 2014 talked about that loss to Clemson in the Orange Bowl. After that loss, guys had some heart-to-heart conversations, and that was really one of the driving forces in 2014 was coming up short against Clemson in 2013, and a lot of similarities between coming up short against Clemson last year, and we'll see how it all plays out. Today was also National Signing Day, and for the case of the Ohio State Buckeyes, it is very much the rich getting richer as they brought in another haul of 5- and 4-star recruits to Columbus.
Yeah, I call it a heist, which I think works. They got 5 5-stars, 13 4-stars, 21 member class, ranked 2nd in the country. I mean, it's just incredible what they do year in and year out, as well as Alabama and Clemson. I mean, it's just hard to envision those 3 programs just not winning the national title for like the next decade. Like, they're just going to trade it because they are separating themselves from the rest of the country. They continue to do so. Ohio State got another 5-star quarterback. It's kind of interesting how they've become quarterback U in a way. just cycling them in and out. It hasn't always been the case throughout the program's history. Had 6 Ohioans in this year's class, which is a pretty big number since they've become a national recruiting program. But the state was pretty loaded this year, one of the better years in Ohio in quite some time. So as you said, 100% is the rich getting richer. They're separating more and more from the Big Ten. Michigan had the number 10 ranked class, which is fine. Like that's a great class. They had a 5-star quarterback, all that. But the talent from 2 to 10, it really is huge. I know that might sound weird to people, but there's a really, really big difference between the quality of play in Ohio State's class and the quality of Michigan's.
Speaking of Michigan, a little bit of uneven news for Michigan. They did lose a couple of kids. One flipped to Maryland, one flipped to UCLA. But offensively, they did pretty good with bringing in a good quarterback, a good running back as well. So if Jim Harbaugh is still around next season, it looks like he's got some kids to come in who are highly touted offensively.
Yeah, definitely an offense-heavy class. It'll be interesting to see what happens from now to February, how they focus on guys on defense. But I mean, you got a 5-star quarterback, a 4-star running back who's almost a 5-star, 4-star offensive lineman who's going to be really, really good, and you got a 4-star wide receiver. So I mean, they got like the positions you need on offense. And the biggest thing for Michigan, I don't know if they would necessarily have a playoff appearance or not, but just they haven't had a true difference maker at quarterback. And perhaps J.J. McCarthy is that guy. I mean, we will find out, obviously. But if I'm Michigan, I think I might throw him out and just have him be the starter next season. I mean, Joe Milton didn't show you a whole lot this year. Cade McNamara, hard to tell. I mean, he played really well in one game, and then that was basically it. So we'll see. The other thing I wonder about the defensive decommits, does that portend major staff changes? Like, do they know something is in the works? And is Don Brown going to be back next year? That's a big question in Ann Arbor.
I think when you look at the Michigan staff, perhaps that is what Jim Harbaugh is going to have to do, make a sacrificial lamb, if you will. He'll take the contract extension, take the pay cut, but totally revamp that defensive staff because, let's face it, over the last year and a half, Don Brown's not been earning his keep.
Yeah, I mean, I think they need a massive overhaul. It's just, it would be really hard for them to just bring everyone back intact when, this is basically the third year that it hasn't worked. And the defense especially. I mean, it's remarkable how fast it's gone downhill when you consider, they were favored going into that Ohio State game in 2018. But since that day, I mean, the defense just really hasn't performed very well, and certainly not against quality opponents.
All right, thank you very much, Kyle Rowland from the Toledo Blade. Of course, you can read his coverage of Ohio State and Michigan, both on the online and the print editions of the Blade. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.